Good morning, everyone, or at least morning my time. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. We're back with another Saturday live stream, this time focusing on two watch releases. I'd say two of the bigger watch releases this week. That's all relative, but in terms of brand popularity, Tudor and Omega obviously wield a great deal of influence over the hobby in general. And since they have some new models in existing collections, I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to spend some time and go over that. But first, of course, standard housekeeping items to take care of. Not a lot to update you on. I haven't had any videos since the last live stream, as expected. So nothing to report on there. In terms of on the wrist today is a Moser Pioneer Center Seconds. I would have worn a Tudor or an Omega, but I don't own any. I used to. I have had a couple Tudors in the past, and I've had one Omega, but I have let all of those watches go. So let's go ahead and greet the chat. Those of you that are watching the recording, feel free to leave comments about the watches. I do go back and read the comments. And there are links in the video description to the articles that I'm using as the sort of basis for the discussion. But there are a number of articles about both of these releases because they're such a major player in terms of brands and desire to learn more about them. So Fade to Black, good morning. Hope things are going well for you. And Kevin as well out in Florida. Hope things are great out there on the East Coast. And hello to Junior from Michigan. So we've covered, well, actually, I don't know where Fade to Black is, but we've covered most of the US. I don't know. Sometimes we do have people from other countries that like to watch as well. Koji, thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Incidentally, if you want to join that, there is a link to that in the video description. It's 99 cents a month because it's the 99-cent club. It's kind of obvious. So asks a question, why did you let the Tudors go? Well, two different reasons for two different models. So the first one that I think I owned was, I can't remember. I got them around the same time. I think it was the Black Bay Bronze. And the reason I let the Black Bay Bronze go is that I'm not talking the Black Bay 58 Bronze. This was the chonker. It wasn't the original. The original has a tropical brown dial. It was the second one. Same exact specs, except it had black with gilt on it. I really like the way that watch looks quite a bit. And I have a Baltic now that looks a lot like it. However, the thing was massive. So they now have a different model line for 43 millimeter watches, except the bronzes called Black Bays were always 43 when the rest of the Black Bay lineup was 41. I have no idea why. It's just the way it was. So while I really liked it, I like that aluminum based bronze, which is what the Baltic has. It was so big. I just decided it didn't overhang the wrist, but I mean, this is my largest watch now. And you see, I have a little bit of space. I think the bronze was even longer though, and this is already a bit much for me. So that's why I let that one go. And then the Tudor 1926, the opaline dial with the blue numerals. That was my other watch, very comfortable watch actually. And I often sing the praises of the 1926 if you're looking for a Datejust-esque watch, but don't want to pay for a Datejust, but you still want something from that family of brands under Hans Wilsdorf. So, and if you can get behind the waffle pattern on the dial. I really liked it, really thin. That's an under 10 millimeter watch because it's just an E-Bosch. Like I think mine was at a base, but they use Sellita now. But they modify them a little bit. That's why they're E-Bosch. But anyway, long story short, it's a very generic watch, or I'll be more generous and say it's a go anywhere, do anything style watch. 100 meters of water resistance, reasonable size, on bracelet, probably wears on strap pretty well. I never put it on strap though, so I have to hedge. But they sell them on like leather straps, for example, as well. But ultimately, I had just way too many watches in my collection that did the same thing. Time plus date is like, well, at the time I had a Grand Seiko spring drive and the dial I liked better. And I had a few other things that just, I think it's a good watch if you have a small collection. If you have a larger collection, it probably is going to struggle to have an identity. And so I ended up selling it. But all right, so there's the story behind all of that. I'm sure everyone was super thrilled. Pavlov, welcome to the live stream. Canada represented. Don't know what part of Canada. I know some pinball people up in Canada. Toronto area. Actually, I know someone who moved all the way out to Saskatchewan. I think he used to live in Ottawa. Very, Canada's really big into pinball, so not too surprising. Fade says Bahamas. Oh, okay. So we do have international presence in addition to Canada. Canada, where we haven't made them the 51st state, so we don't get to call them that. They hate that too when you bring that up for understandable reasons. Pavlov does ask, what's the millimeter on that? I assume he means the Moser 43. 43, I believe. They have the 41s now, but this is an older edition with the black DLC casing. I think they might have DLC in the 41 now. I'm not sure. But this is the one that's called the Funky Blue. They still make it. If you want to check out, I buy it used. I buy almost all the expensive watches used for obvious reasons. So, and Pavlov notes Toronto. Okay. And Ann says he probably knows some of the same pinball people. You may very well. I'll tell you two of them, in fact. One is Mr. David Dennis, who co-hosts Silverball Chronicles, a history pinball podcast. And then another is Albert Algar, who I'm saying their full names because they're podcast hosts. And he's hosted a few podcasts over the years. So I have a couple of podcasts as well in pinball. So, it's a small world. You think watches are small. It's a small world in pinball. Absolutely small world. But anyway, let us jump to the bigger world of Tudor. We're going to start with Tudor first because I think it's a little bit less interesting of release, but it's still probably interesting to a number of people that were attracted to the model. And that is, we have a new Ranger, new in two different ways. One, 36 millimeters. That's probably the bigger news available. You see the two colorways here. And then the other, though, these are, I think, two different sizes because they still have the 39 millimeter. And then also, it's not just available in black now. They have it now in this sort of dune sand color. I think Tudor calls it dune white or sand white or something along those lines. But let me go ahead and give you some quick specifications about this. Just so, again, they're two different models. So the 36 millimeter iteration, I'll throw up another. Here you go. You can see the 36 and the 39 pretty well with this shot. This is monochrome watches.com. So again, link in the video description. We will actually read the article. I just want it for a few of these photos. So you can see the 36 on the left and the 39 millimeter on the right. In terms of this one on the left, 36 millimeter, not sure of the lug to lug. I couldn't find an exact measurement. So proportionally, I would estimate it's probably around 44 millimeters or so. Lug width on this is 19 millimeters. Thickness is less than the 39. It's 11 millimeters. 100 meters of water resistance. This is driven by, I believe, the MT5400 movement. That's a 4 hertz movement with 70 hours power reserve compared to the 39 millimeter. Now, the 39 millimeter, other than this new dial color you see, this is all the same as before. So 39 millimeters in diameter. Lug to lug's a little over 47 millimeters. Lug width is a little bit bigger. It's a 20 millimeter lug width. Thickness is 1 millimeters higher at 12. Still has 100 meters water resistance. It's driven by the MT5402, which is also a 4 hertz, 70-hour power reserve movement, but it is a bigger movement. That's why there are two different numbers in terms of the two different sizes. Pricing for the 36 millimeters is $3,700 on bracelet. You can get it on strap for $3,350. That's US dollars. And then the 39 millimeter in this dune color or in black is $3,825 bracelet and $3,475 on strap. So here are the same sizes again in the original, I think, more familiar black colorway. So just as a summary, the 39 millimeter, I believe, was dropped by Tudor, came out, I should say. I meant dropped to the public in 2022. So it's a relatively recent attempt to modernize the field watch. This is really their field watch. I can't really think of another thing in the Tudor catalog. It feels like a field watch. And that's with they introduced the in-house movement, the MT5402. That was in the 2022 model. And a lot of people liked it. I actually have a friend of mine. He's been on the panel a few times, Tony. He doesn't have one of these, but he has praised the Ranger. He's liked it a lot. I've never been able to get behind the hour hand. So just full disclosure, I'm still not a big fan of the watch, though personally, I feel the proportions on the 36 look more attractive in these photos that they've provided, and that it doesn't feel quite so, I don't know. A field watch should be easy to read, and they both look easy to read. There's something about the 39 that never really clicked with me, though I definitely see why it's got field watch vibes through and through. So pricing wise, it's in line with Tudor's lower end of Tudor. So it's also been a more, I guess, affordable, or better word would probably be approachable watch to consider. And of course, with the 36 millimeter being a little bit less money as well, you'll save over $100 on it if you're willing to wear a 36 millimeter. Now, both watches wear pretty modestly. Again, with the lug to lug on the 39 is just over 47 millimeters, about 47.3, I think. So for larger risks, they might still be put off a little bit by it. Generally, anything under 50 for me works great. And then where do I start getting concerned? Generally, if we're getting down like around below 43 is sort of where I would draw the line. So for me, I probably, again, because I'm estimating this is somewhere between 43 and 44 millimeter lug to lug on the 36, I probably find it quite wearable. I generally do think 36s are pretty wearable for my wrist size. And my wrist size is 6.75 inches. So, but I typically, my sweet spot's normally 38 to 39. It's just, I like the look of the 36 a little bit better here. I'd say in terms of criticisms, I don't, other than my historic issues that I've had with the, excuse me, someone was trying to call me. Other than my historic criticisms with just the design choices that I'm not a big fan of, the lack of applied hour indices probably, it does feel cheaper. That's a criticism I know a number of people have had with Oris in particular, like some of their pro pilots and stuff that are pretty expensive because of the in-house movement that they have gone with on some of those models. But then we end up with these situations where it tends to look, printed just doesn't look as elegant. But again, from a ruggedness standpoint, printed isn't going to fall off if you're jarring the watch. I think they're leaning very much into the field watch vibe with this. Personally, I like the way the numbers look quite a bit on this. Like the font choices on this watch, I do like a lot. And it's a very unique looking watch. I can't think of any. You all might know. But I'm too inexperienced to be able to tell you another hour hand like that looks like this. And so even though I don't love it, it does feel unique, kind of like how the snowflake hand is unique to Tudor. Likewise, the second hand, you can see a pretty good view here of it. It's almost this sort of rectangular, or maybe I want to go with a trapezoid or something. Again, I feel like I maybe have seen this before, but not often. And I also like that they red tipped it. I really do like this Dune colorway better than the black. The black is very field watch traditional. So I think for a purist, the black is probably a better choice for you. But I am drawn a bit to this. I actually saw on the Watches with Dennis Discord, which there's a link to that. And you don't have to be a club member to be on the Discord. It's just where we go and chat about watches. Thomas with the Escapement Show just posted an in-person photo of this. I think he's at Dubai Watch Week, and he posted a photo. I don't know if it was 36 or 39. I don't remember, but it was this Dune color. It looked lighter to me in his photo than it does here in these mock-ups. But I don't know if that was just because the lighting was really bright. It did look more white than it does here, which again, given what I think the official description of the color has been, if we jump to Tudor's website, which I have conveniently preloaded as if I planned to do it. So they say beige as the color. All right, so that's their official interpretation of it. See, I think it looks pretty light here. And obviously there's shading and stuff that they've got going on as an effect. So again, different lighting conditions are going to make it look different. I wondered, and I'd asked Thomas, and I didn't see a response yet as of the time of starting this live stream, was how this beige looked compared to the Oyster Perpetual brown dial that came out this year at Watches and Wonders from Rolex, because I like that brown. The more I've seen the brown from Rolex, the more I've liked it. Like when they launched the new Oyster Perpetuals this year, the pistachio was my favorite. And I'd still say probably it would be what I would go for, because I already have brown. If I was to get an Oyster Perpetual, I'd probably want the pistachio if I was getting a current one. I used to own a green 34 millimeter Oyster Perpetual Sunburst, one of the prior gen models, but I let it go because it wore a bit small, even with the cushion case. But anyway, neither here nor there. So I don't think I like this beige as much as I like the Oyster Perpetual from what I've started to see of the images, but I do think it is a very attractive colorway. Tudor usually balances their numerals and their colors really well. And I tend to like Tudor's font choices too. So overall, a lot of these people, I like this a lot better than the black version. And I like the 36 millimeter notably more than the 39 millimeter. So overall, I think this is a pretty good looking field watch. All that said, I'm not an inherent field watch fan outside of like, if we want, you could carve up field watches if you want. So pilot watches like Fliegers could be interpreted as a subdivision of field watches. And I do like Fliegers. But in terms of what I think most of us think of with field watches, the land-based field watches, I used to have a Marathon that was very much in that, much like how the Hamilton khaki fields look. It had that sort of dial configuration, and I like the look of it. I never wore it enough to warrant, as though I sold it. So sort of the same thing here. I don't really ever envision myself wearing something like the Ranger, so it's not a watch for me. But I do think that everything they have done is probably an improvement. If I was to criticize anything about the release, it is I'm sure a lot of Ranger fans wanted a polar dial, and Tudor got a Tudor, and Tudor never gives you exactly what you want when it first comes. I swear it's strategically done on purpose. And I don't know if that is to help always make Rolex look a little bit better, or I'm wrong and it just ends up this way and we all notice it. But it's just like, hey, look, they came out with a Coke bezel GMT, and but they had to use gilt instead of just stark white for the numerals because they got to be can't be exactly what everyone wanted. And so that's why I think there was a lot of excitement when there was finally a Black Bay that looked a lot like the vintage sub with the actual white text and the black dial. It was like finally, and that I think they'll get there with this eventually. So if this is not your colorway and you don't like the black colorway, I would say hold out. Eventually, I am sure Tudor will do polar white. They just they it's like they to me they stage it to try and get people to go ahead and settle with the idea that you'll be a repeat customer because you'll end up selling your dune colored Ranger to get the one that's even more white eventually. I don't know if that's true or not. But in my head canon, that's how Tudor operates as a business. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the watch overall. So I thought pretty good job out of Tudor. Is it going to sell great? I'm not going to say yes because it's not a Pelagos or a Black Bay. So the Ranger line has never attracted a tremendous amount of attention. I don't think this changes that. I think offering a 36 millimeter does expand in terms of the number of people that want a more modest watch. So I think it was smarter than say going from 39 to 41 millimeter. I actually think there's more room on, again, historically field watches ran smaller. So I think if you're leaning into that level of enthusiast, going smaller is the smarter move. Now I won't be surprised if within 4 years we have a 41, but I think it was the right move, right play for them at this point. So Pavlov says, love the number font. Yes, I do too. Let me throw that back up here. I like almost all of Tudor's fonts that they've done. Scotty Pinball, welcome to the live stream. Similar hour hand to Hamilton Field Explorer. I'll have to go back and look. But okay, that's good to know. And of course, Hamilton is the king of field watches. It's the first brand anyone thinks of when you say field watch. Matthew, thank you incidentally for being a 99-cent club member. I have the 39 in black on bracelet and have the NATO as well. My wife stole it. Maybe I need one of these now. Okay. Yeah, the depends if you want a smaller one or you're saying you want the 39 here in the beige dial. Because hey, it give you a little bit of variety. Personally, I typically stay not typically. I can't think of any watch where I've bought from the same line because like if I had a Ranger already, I would be like, all right, well, if I want another Tudor, I'd probably be like, okay, well, maybe I'll get a Black Bay now, or a Pelagos. Is it Pelagos or Pelagos? I don't know. I've said it both ways. I'm sure all the ways I say it are wrong, but just because I like more variety than just different dial colors. But I know people that's their collection. Will be like, I collect Seiko Monsters, and I just get different dial choices. For me, I like experimenting more with like the different casings and seeing more change than just colorways. But we all have our own preferences, which is what makes the hobby so interesting. Orange Hand says, my bet is we'll see a Polar Explorer 1 from Rolex in 2026. Interesting. Honestly, I'd not really thought too much about whether they would do the Polar on the regular Explorer. I think your prediction is reasonable. I'll put it like that. Is there a lot of demand for that? I don't know. See, the Rolex Explorer to me isn't a very popular watch. It seems like a lot of people don't have to wait very long to get it. Now, it's more popular than the Explorer 2. So there is that. And both of those are probably more popular than the Air King. But in terms of the professional sport line, I feel like the Air King and the two Explorers are on the lower level in terms of excitement. But I don't know. I'd have to think about it because now I'm wondering about yacht masters that aren't titanium and where I'd rank them. And this is all guessing, so it's kind of pointless, I suppose. But nonetheless, interesting prediction. Underachieving watch collector, thank you for watching. I agree, Dennis. Tudor always seems to throw at least one wrench in their designs. Again, to me it feels like corporate ownership, the Hans Wildorf Foundation demands it, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is sheer coincidence they can never quite give you 100%. They can get to 100%, but they never start there. But I don't know that if that is indeed true or not. What I do know is true is as much interest as the Ranger has generated in terms of online watch discussion, it is definitely not generated as much as I have seen about Omega's fourth generation Planet Ocean. So, subtle as a chainsaw as I am with my transitions, let's go ahead and jump into that. This time I went ahead and pulled the article from Hodinkee. I think both of these sites, Monogram and Hodinkee, have articles on both these watches. But again, the link is in the video description if you want to go and read up about these and look at the pictures. Now, there actually are three different colorways that have come out. So there's an orange one, a black one, and a blue one. And I'm defining that around the bezel colors. So I'll just put these two up here, the blue and the black for now. But I want to go ahead and give you some of the baseline specifications, get those out of the way. So this is a generational change. This is the fourth generation. This is a model line, the Planet Ocean, that debuted in 2005. So some of the regular stuff is still in play here in the terms of I don't believe that there's not a notable movement change. It is a slightly different caliber, but that's because these don't have a date. So let me go ahead and get through the sizing though. So this is actually smaller than the Gen 3 was. This is a 42 millimeter watch. Lug to lug is 47.5 millimeters. So this is going to fit a lot of wrists, even at the 42 millimeter sizing. Lug width is 21 millimeters if you want to switch it to straps. Thickness, quite an improvement, over 2 millimeters of reduction. And I really want to compliment that because one of my biggest criticisms, anyone who's watched me for a while knows about Omega, is their watches are way thicker than I think they need to be. And they apparently found a way to achieve that here, dropping it to 13.79 millimeters. So it's not a thin watch, but I also wouldn't describe it as a thick watch, especially given that this is a dive watch with 600 meters of water resistance, consistent with what we expect from the Planet Ocean. The caliber in these, because it's a no date watch now, is the 8902. That's a 3.5 hertz movement, 60 hours of power reserve. Now, pricing. It depends. So it depends on strap, bracelet, and it also depends on color. So the blue version and the black version are $8,600 on strap, $9,200 US on bracelet. It's $300 more in both configurations for the orange one. I have no idea why. I don't think in Gen 3 that the orange ones were more expensive than the black ones, but for whatever reason, the orange one costs $300 more. So it's $8,900 on strap and it's $9,500 on bracelet. So I mentioned that we've seen some improvements and stuff in terms of our change ups from the generation. The Hodinkee article actually does a really good job summarizing. In fact, this paragraph here probably is the best at getting you a lot of it. So the 13.79 millimeters of thickness that I mentioned, Gen 3 was 16.1. So again, it almost sounds like it's 3 millimeters less. It's not, but it is over 2, just because 16.1, and then we're just under 14 at this point. And so again, the sizing also is different. You don't see it here in the article, but the Gen 3 is actually 43.5. So they reduced the thickness by 1.5 millimeters. In fact, in order to provide some clarity on that, I wanted to show you, this is the new orange version. So this is Gen 4. And I went ahead and even though you don't see it on like the shopping page of their site, I used the the Wayback Machine the Wayback Machine with archive.org, and I was able to get to a Gen 3 orange one. So yeah, I know the dial's white versus black, but I wanted you to be able to see some of the differences. So the hand shape has still been respected. No date window now. Font is similar, but the numerals do appear different in approach. You can see that almost like there seems to be more depth here. I don't know if this is a superior image or what. Bezel seems more pronounced to me, especially with the knurling here on the new Gen 4 versus what we have with the Gen 3. One of the big changes that I have not mentioned yet, but you can see it between these two images, is they dropped the helium escape valve here at the 10 o'clock position. So this is the Gen 3. There's the obvious helium escape valve. That is gone now out of this version of the watch. Another thing that I think is noteworthy is the crown texture is quite a bit different between the two. This one seems, I'm going to describe it as more rounded. This is much more traditional with what I associate with historic Omegas. Another big difference, this one actually I think will be fairly controversial, is the bracelets, which is why I picked bracelet version. So you see the brushed bracelet approach here. On the new one, we have polished center links. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more later because I think that's probably the biggest miss they've done. And then the case itself. You see the more traditional kind of, I'll say, cushion case look to the Gen 3. This is the overhead view, of course. We do have other images we can cycle through to maybe get a look at it. And it's using the 8900. But here, a lot more sharpness, sharp angular drop-off edges. I'm going to describe it as a very modern look. In fact, it reminded me, I think I heard a reference to this because I saw this and I thought those angles remind me of something. And then I watched ID Guy's video about the new release. And it's like, it was Grand Seiko. That's what it was. And so here's an SPGA 481 from Grand Seiko. This is in the sports collection. So most of the Grand Seikos don't look like this, but some of the sports models do. Notice these really, I'm going to describe them as sharp, really sharp drop angles that happen on the case. I feel like that is what's been done here by Omega. Some really, not the same exact shape, of course, but really sharp drop offs. A very, again, very modern design in my impression. Like this is quite a bit bigger change than I expected out of a generational shift. I mean, it's a generational shift, so I should say I should expect a big change. But in this day and age, I've come to feel like those changes aren't actually going to be all that significant. In this instance, I think they actually did quite a bit. So closed case back now, that probably was done in part to help with achieving the thinness of the watch. I have seen other Planet Oceans that had closed case backs with more intricate looks than how this one is. Obviously, the example I've pulled up is not one of those. I don't really care one way or the other about what's done. I think doing a closed case back is worth it to get the size, the thickness down. So I think that was a smart play on their part. I do like that these images tend to be relatively similar, so you can see kind of the differences in the bezel look and all the rest of it. So, okay. Now pricing also, that's way up now. So again, I had mentioned that this is now $9,200, not the orange version. You can see that these were, I mean, this is a titanium one, but so like this orange one was $7,400. And when I weigh back this, I only weigh back this to August 1st. So it's not like it's been a year or anything. Here's the black one, $7,400. So they've gone up almost $2,000. In fact, the orange one will cost you more than $2,000 more than the last orange one. Otherwise, it's just shy of it. It's $1,800 difference. So there is this, again, and we've talked about that a bit. Omega has once more done a pretty significant price increase on their release. But granted, this is a different generation. But movement-wise, we still 60-hour power reserve. You know, it's coaxial, all meta certified, all that sort of stuff. So my overall thoughts. I would say the way to describe this is that Omega has gone for wearability, and I think that is a smart move. They've also, I feel, embraced a bit of some aesthetic choices that feel kind of in the gotta go anywhere, do anything style, though I don't think that will ever really work for a watch like the Planet Ocean all the way. I know someone who had actually thought that this looked like they were trying to compete with a Submariner. I don't really get Submariner vibes out of the Planet Ocean. Now, if you want to start comparing it to the Sea Dweller, I still feel that this doesn't look like those watches. I think that parallel that ID Guy had to Grand Seiko and the example I've shown you from Grand Seiko's website in terms of case structure, it's more akin to that. Now, why go with such a modern style with these sharp edges to it? I think that is to try and make it more appealing to people that aren't actually swimming and diving with this watch. And that's also why I think that we went with the center links that are polished. I think that is really the only, you see, it's still a fairly sizable watch, but the center links, I think, are the biggest mistake to have done here. This is what Zenith does with their watches, like the Chronomaster Sport, the Chronomaster Originals. It's very attractive until you start scratching them. And I have a Chronomaster Original, and I have scratched the polished portions because it's almost impossible not to. Now, I think that will put a number of people off because I've known, doing this YouTube thing, I've had a number of you all come in on videos where we've talked about things like Zenith and said, you will not buy watches on bracelet if they have polished center links. not sports watches. And so going brushed with the traditional look that they used to have. Let's see if we can find you a good shot here, like this. Less exciting. Like this is, it's a less flashy watch, the old version, the Gen 3. But I do think from a practical standpoint, we all know that brushed satin finish always blends scratches better. So it looks better in terms of that regard. I think the dial on the Gen 4s are an improvement. I always have had a bit of a soft spot for the Planet Ocean. I like it as a watch. I've always liked it. I've never owned one because they were very big. I think going down to 42 millimeters from 43.5 was smart. I do think that, especially considering, here's the website that's kind of introducing it now. I'll let you see some of the loop video that they've got on this. I think that the idea of trying to make it be more realistic in terms of, we know people aren't really diving with these, they're going in and wearing them to the office and stuff. These changes fit with that to make it feel like it's got a bit more unique personality. I don't think it's divorced itself from any of the key elements that you need with the Planet Ocean. The handset, I still feel, is true to the model. The water resistance obviously is true to the model. I think dropping the date was probably smart, but again, if you're trying to, like, I like it better because of the symmetry. But if you're trying to appeal to an office environment, the date is practical. Like, a lot of people like to wear a date watch if it's really their only watch that they're going to have. So that, I think, is a little bit of an odd decision. It'll be interesting to see if they go ahead and they drop some models where they go back to the old 8900 movement. Because again, power reserve and everything else is, I think, identical. It's just the 8912 is the no date. So I may not be completely right on that. So feel free to correct me. But so there's that. The other thing that I think kind of alienates it, keeps it, I think, true to feeling like a Planet Ocean, but I think it alienates it from the office watch perspective, is this version feels like a lot of bezel. And the watches have always been big, but here again, let me see how the bezel sort of sits. I mean, it's a big bezel, as it should be. It should be easy to read. But we jump to this new iteration. Let me do the side by sides. I think it's because the knurling seems more pronounced. Like it curl, like you can see the edging from the top down view much better than here, where you're catching you can see the edging of it, the edges of it. But here feels like it cuts in more. Like the bezel insert's a little shorter, so you see some of the knurling better from the top. But I think the end result is, when I look at the two, also that this is a 42 millimeter watch versus 43.5, but the dial diameter, take a look as I cycle between the two. The dial diameter, to me, because the watch is a little smaller, looks a little smaller, less real estate for the dial. The end result, I would still say Gen 4 looks better to me than Gen 3, but it looks like a dive watch. It feels, I'm going to use some hyperbole. It's all bezel. This watch feels like it's got a humongous bezel and a relatively small dial, whereas the larger version, it felt more proportional to me. Maybe because I've seen Gen 3s for so long, it feels more proportional. I think for a dive watch, this is a very good look. For a more office watch style, it's kind of flashy. It's kind of flashy, even for, and again, I think maybe it's flashy in a sport way. But combined with like flashy in this polished center linked way, I find it a little incongruous, maybe is the word I'm looking for. It feels like in some parts of the Gen 4, they leaned super hard into it being this robust diver. And then in other aspects, getting rid of the healing escape valve, polishing the center links, it feels like it's leaning really into, this is a sleek thing to wear with a blazer while you're going to work. I don't know. Again, what exactly they were thinking. It feels like they had their feet in both puddles, or both sides of the pond. Overall, aesthetically, I think it works. I think that, like, if that was the goal, to try and be both things, I think they did a pretty good job of achieving both things. In terms of who's your target audience, I get a little confused. I feel like they maybe want to sell it to people that still want to do a lot of serious diving. That's a very small market. And maybe that's why they said, well, we don't really need the helium escape valve because people aren't going to saturation dive with this watch. Let's just be honest. And so they did that, but then they've gone with these other choices where it's like more, I want people to notice this when I'm in the office. So, and in a way, like a really obvious bezel is going to kind of do that. I don't know. But overall, I liked this release quite a bit. I don't like the price. What a shock. Who does? I don't think that the changes warrant a $2,000 price increase on the model, but Omega has been raising their prices a lot. Here's an interesting shot to give you a good sense of that, just how angular this case. That is probably the actual biggest change. I know the helium escape valve is going to stand out a lot. The no date's going to stand out a lot, and the bezel is going to stand out a lot. But honestly, it's the case shape. This idea, I think that's the boldest thing I've seen out of Omega in quite a while in this price bracket, is to actually go ahead and dramatically rework the case. And I think it works here. So I actually am pleasantly surprised with this watch. And I think it's pretty attractive. So I would say good job overall. A few questionable moves on it, but we're not all going to agree in terms of design choices on everything. So it is what it is in that regard. But I think I've rambled on enough about this watch. So I want to go ahead and see what you guys happen to think about that. So Tuna, thank you for being a 99% Club member, and greetings to you. Hope you enjoyed the live stream. And Trap Vision, thanks for tuning in. Hope you are having a great weekend. Fade to Black says, I think the polished center links would have looked better with a gloss style. It could help. My watch that I have does not have a gloss style. And I've never owned a gloss style that I can think of with polished center links. So I can't really opine on it. It won't surprise me that I'm sure we will see eventually different dial shades as this goes along, and perhaps some different texturing to the dials or glosses to go along with the mattes. But again, it's kind of like what was our vibe? Were we going for this flashy thing, or are we going for this sporty thing? And I feel like they kind of walked the line here and did both, depending on what element we want to discuss. I would like to see it with a glossy dial, though, to get a look. I tend to like really glossy blacks. Lacquers, a lacquer dial could have been really interesting too, because that'll give you that glossy effect and would be a feature you could highlight. Remus, thank you for being a club member, by the way. Omega got rid of the date and display case back to make it thinner. They're still using the same fat movements that they've been using for about 20 years. Yes. And if you didn't know on that, the moment you go to the specifications, so if we go to these two versions, I do like that they keep the legacy pages up. You see, I tried to be prepared today, guys. I loaded the tech specs so we could just scroll down and quickly look at the official announcement. So you see still the 21 millimeters between the lugs. Lug to lug on the old model was 49 millimeters. This is down to 47.5. They're both relatively wearable for most people that don't have particularly small wrists. The thickness change of the 17.9 now versus 16.09. But the Omega 8900 is a self-winding, coaxial 60-hour power reserve movement. The 8912 is just the no date. It's just a no date version of that movement. It's still only 60 hours of power reserve. And I do want to stress that, because I think one might, when they see the near on $2,000 price increase, think that you're getting something better with the movement. You are not. The old movement, Meta certified, all the rest of it, that's all still true. I'm just saying, you're not getting an extra 5 or 10 hours power reserve out of this watch. You're getting what you're getting, and that's just the way of it. So just be aware of that going in. They did not give you new movement tech. So I do think that is a very good point that Remus brings up, about that they have still not dropped a new version of the coaxial that's noteworthy. And I would like to see one thinner. In a dive watch, obviously, we don't expect the watch to be particularly thin. So we get away with a lot. They get away with a lot in regards to that. And there are some interesting aspects to the coaxial movement. I've been on the fence on, my gut has been telling me that Omega doesn't want to invest the R&D in trying to come up with a new iteration of the coaxial. My head tells me they've probably been working on it and it's just not ready, given how long in the tooth the movement is. 60 hours of power reserve in today's world is not impressive, but it also isn't embarrassing. So in some ways, I could see why they don't feel the need to unveil a new movement, because 60 hours of power reserve is pretty respectable. You can take the watch off on a Friday, probably pick it back up on Monday, and you're going to be fine. So they're probably like, we're good enough. Do we really need to get to 72 hours? Some things where we've seen some other brands lean into. That being said, on the thickness front, there used to not be any that I could find. There are very few watches in the men's collection of Omega that you can find under 10 millimeters thick. And I think they're all DeVilles. So, and by they are all, I mean, there are 3. So it's something where I would like to see them get the watches down more in thickness, and I think this was the right move. And if giving up the date meant they got it under, I mean, over 16 millimeters was just, if you want people to wear it to the office, it's just anything over 15. I don't know what you guys can opine. What do you think is a thick watch? For me, anything that's 15 or bigger is just bottom line thick. I don't care what it's built for. It's thick. And am I willing to wear a watch over 15 millimeters in thickness? Possibly. I'm not sure either. This Moser with the domed crystal and stuff, I don't even think is 15 millimeters thick. I'm not sure. Now I'm curious. I'll probably load that up while we discuss things. But if I can remember how to spell Pioneer. But let me go ahead and load up another one of the chat things. Trap says, I wonder why big companies like Omega refuse to treat the metals, adding to its resistance to scratches. Interesting. I don't know. I've never really thought about like what their decision making is in regards to like how they choose to do what they do. It's kind of like that discussion about anti-reflective glass, right? Like some brands do a lot of anti-reflective, like Omega, right? And some, but like I remember with Omega, one of the frustrations a lot of people really had was that they treat both sides of the crystal, and then you start scratching the anti-reflective coating because it's not made out of sapphire. And then you can start seeing these scratches, and the scratches are actually in the film that they went with in order to provide that extra anti-reflectiveness. But it does make the watches quite a bit easier to photograph, which always was appreciated by a lot of people that were doing content on them. So yeah, it's a curiosity. Vron Kroll says the bezel insert isn't all that wide, but there is also a ring around the crystal that makes it seem like a buku bezel situation. Like, I know this word, but I don't know how to say it. So do I really know it at all? Probably not. Okay, interesting point. MCART, it's disappointing that cheap looking engraving on the case back. Seems like Omega got tired with many liberation of the Aquaterra, and I think you meant iterations of the Aquaterras and Speedmasters. Now they will probably milk the planet oceans. Maybe. I would say that's probably going to come down to whether or not they sell well. The Planet, again, with the 600 meters of water resistance, like this is not the Planet Ocean is not a watch that, in my view, has ever been mainline, right? It's like the Seamaster 300M is the serious, it's the Submariner. It's the serious dive watch that you don't have to be super serious with. When you got to Sea Dwellers and Planet Oceans, this is more like, we're serious now. Like we want some real, because already these things are like 300 meters water resistance. And then for those that wanted that kind of look, but didn't need to play like quite that hard in it, that's where things like the Aquaterra, where it's like, okay, it's got water resistance, respectable water resistance, good water resistance even, but doesn't need to be dialed all the way to the nth degree with sorry, I still was checking on that to see if I could find the thickness on these Pioneers. It doesn't need to be a true dive watch, so to speak. So quickly on the Pioneer thickness, I ended up not being able to find it. I found this version of the funky blue. Maybe they don't make this shade anymore. 42.8 was the diameter. I was trying to see what the height of this thing was, and Moser's site might not actually tell me. So you know what? I'm being silly. I take measurements on all my watches. I just have to go to my own website, which is watcheswithdennis.com. I guess I could share that. So let's see, H Moser, not just Moser. So anytime I do a review, I get slow about it. So I'm behind a couple of watches. Okay. 14.3 millimeters. So even these aren't 15. But anytime I do a review video, ultimately I kind of transcript it and post it. So if you ever want to just read, I just did it so that, because some of the stuff I review doesn't have a lot of coverage. I just do it like that so people can explore, the stats and stuff without having to watch my stuff. Anyway, so here's the engraving that MCART was criticizing, and it is pretty basic. One of the it was ID Guys, I think, video he covered. I don't think it's in the Houdini. They don't do any side by sides in the Houdinki article, but he showed what the prior case back looked like, and it was a lot more textured here on the actual covering, and it was more interesting visually. But again, you don't spend a lot of time looking at that, so for me, it's not something I would get hung up on. But I do it's definitely a step down. I don't think there's really any way to criticize it otherwise. Underachieving watch collector says, word on the street is that the bezel has a little back play and they don't feel as good as Rolex and Tudor. When I had my 300M, I did not notice back play myself. That was the old Tudor we were talking about. I want to go ahead and give you another shot of the bezels, though, to appreciate what was brought up earlier about the ring and stuff. So here, I'll let you kind of see all. I'll try and position it so you can kind of see all three of them. Here, my head's in the way. Let me move that up a bit. There you go. I didn't notice it with my 300M. The one thing I didn't like about the 300M though was the bezel. The clicking and the lack of backplay was great. It's just the scallops. If my fingers were a little damp, I could not handle that watch. It would just slide in my hands. And it was just like, oh my gosh, guys, what in the world is going on? Looks great though. So I see why they stick with it, but practically speaking, I was a little frustrated. Let's see. We've got I scrolled, guys. Now I got to jump back down. MCart says, I will rather wait until 2029 and pay a couple hundred more for the sub than going for this Planet Ocean. Omega simply lost their way when it comes to pricing. Pricing is rough. And again, will we see prices come back down with the tariff changes and stuff? I don't know. I dare not speculate. My general rule is prices don't go back down. Usually companies like to keep the additional profit, but if they're hurting, they may need to do something. Jeremy, thank you for being an INS Club member, by the way, and I am glad you're enjoying the stream. Fade to Black agrees with MCart about the waiting. Trap Vision says that at this price, everything needs to be thrown in. Yes, I would. Yeah, again, when we're getting close to $10,000, it would be nice that the rubber strap would be included with the bracelet. That's what I'm assuming in terms of the throw-ins, because that's the two different things you have. And again, I do not know why the orange one, maybe one of you has read something, maybe it's been explained or speculated. I can't speculate for you because I have no idea why this orange one is $300 more than the black or the blue. Like, is the paint that much? Like, it wasn't like that in the past. I always think it's really goofy when you start charging more for colors. Unless it's like, most of the time when you see something like that, it's because it's a limited, like Seiko. Here's this colorway. It's more expensive. It's more expensive because they limited this one and the rest are in the main production. Things like that. Otherwise, my go-to when I see something like that is I think it's a different material, but it's not. These are all steel. So I just do not get it. Bronco says 14 millimeters is already getting thick, in my opinion. Well, I mean, I do agree in that regard. I really like thinner watches. Now, I've never worn an ultra thin like an Octa Finissimo or stuff or things like that, but my dress watches, like none of them are over 11. Most of them are under 10. I'll make exceptions if there are enough complications to kind of warrant it, but I don't really like dress watches being more than 10 or much more than 10. But now sport watches, I'm more lenient. But yeah, I generally, I don't think I own a single, well, after looking up the size of this, I don't own anything that's 15 millimeter. Most of my stuff is under 14. That's a personal preference. And Fade to Black, as in response to MCart, says that the retail price, I'm sure it won't be long until they're all over the gray market dealers at discount. I will note that, like, if you're not in a rush to get this, I'm all about saving money. So I'd say wait a year, maybe less, but wait a year. Joma Shop usually is dripping with Omegas. And if you like the Gen 3 more, go ahead and take a look at Joma Shop now, because I bet you they got some. I don't normally, I've never really shopped for a Planet Ocean, so I can't confirm that. But I've pointed a lot of people to Joma Shop for Seamasters. So they tend to have a lot. So if you don't want it used, but you don't want to pay retail or try and get a discount retail, Joma is a pretty good option for Omega. They tend to hit there relatively quick, and they've got a pretty big selection. So that'd be just me. I'm not endorsed by Joma Shop. I bought my Omega from them, and I know some other people that have done so as well. So I'll just mention it. So Benton says, good morning. What is on your wrist this morning? Well, I've already mentioned it, but thank you for joining us. So I'm wearing my funky blue Moser Pioneer center seconds with the black DLC case, which is in honor of today's episode with the new thinner Gen 4 Omega Planet Oceans is my thickest watch that I own. And I would have worn a Tudor or an Omega for today's topics, but I don't have any anymore, so I couldn't. And Ben says he's wearing the Satori BR. I'm not quite sure how to say it. My Mercanism tells me to say Billard, but I think it's Biard or something. SBO4. Oh my gosh, I can't say any of this stuff. Chrysocolla Platinum. I don't know what that is, but it sounds very fancy. Bauco. We're going over some. I was messing up other pronunciations earlier, so we're celebrating my lack of the ability to speak the English language in any articulable means. But that's how you know I'm not actually AI. It's because of how terrible I am at saying everything. Ben says Moser is daring. I like it, but wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't buy half of Moser's catalog because it's way too out there for me. Illegible is my biggest problem with a lot of the Mosers. I like their idea of minimalism until they're like, we don't even need hour markers. And at that point, I'm like, that's not minimalism. That's just ism. There's nothing left. So Ben says, I do want the Mosers with the Andre Struhler movements. I'm not too familiar with the different, obviously Moser does a number of different types of movements. I'm not super familiar with the various degrees of them and the branding and what's going on with them. Moser's so pricey. The Pioneers are the cheapest models in the current catalog. So, and of course I bought this used. I'm not paying new prices for this stuff. Bronco says, this is off topic, but the new Groan is interesting manual wind column wheel chronograph movement from LJP. I should know that. I don't remember. You've probably noticed I try and say out all the acronyms for people. LJP, La Jouperet. Is that what that is? Is that La Jouperet? I guess tell me in the chat, and I still got to scroll down. I'm like 50,000 posts behind. Let me go ahead and put the Omegas back up because I don't like just looking at me. These Omega arrow hands I'm not a fan of. Meanwhile, I have a few Tudors. I've heard several people not like that both of these, the hour and the minute hand are these broad arrow format. I actually think it looks kind of funky. So I sort of like these. I'm okay with the Tudor Snowflake too, though. I don't love the Snowflake, but I don't hate it. I'm indifferent to the Snowflake. Whereas like Vacheron Constantin, the Patrimonies, I just can't get into the Patrimonies because I don't like how the baton hands look on them. And I'm not innately against baton hands. I just think on a dress watch like that, they don't look right. My Zenith Chronomaster has baton hands, and I think it looks great. Ben does say, though, that he thinks of Seiko when he sees these hour hands. Well, I think of Grand Seiko when I see these new case angles, but so I totally understand. Fade to Black says, I don't mind them. I also like the Tudor Snowflake hands. Bronco says today he's wearing his only dive-ish watch, the Glycine Combat Sub in quartz. It's nice and thin and was cheap, $135 on Ashford. I've never bought through Ashford, but I have gone to their site a few times. And it's got a date Cyclops for my aging eyes. Fade to Black does like the orange one with the orange strap. I do. Maybe they priced it $300 more because they know it's the best looking one. Like the black one is I guess if you were wanting something, you didn't want a sub, but you want something kind of like a sub, I guess that's what you go to. Like that's the classical choice, right? The blue one, I think, is honestly going to be the one that would sell the best. And then the orange one is the one that still feels like it leans most into the dive heritage. But of course, Doxa and orange always makes me think of orange with dive watches. But I used to own an orange dive watch. It was a rotary, but I gave that to someone else after I wasn't wearing it enough. Let's see. Riskful Ignorance does say that MSRP will not drop. Maybe authorized dealers, maybe authorized to discount in the future. I think we're getting back to the days where the third-party ADs can discount on Omega. I still would go gray, though, because I don't think you can get enough discount. So if you're happy with like 10%, maybe you could get that on an Omega. I don't know, though, if you're going to get over 20. Ben says Omega secondary market is what I'd wait for. That would be my personal advice, unless you just got to have it now. And then obviously you got to make the decision that makes you the most happy. Underachieving Watch Collector says the orange bezel Planet Ocean is more expensive because the Swiss will be Swiss. That's such an unsatisfying answer, even if it is true. Yeah, we'll look at the black, or excuse me, the blue and the orange there. Riskful agrees with Ben. Let's see. Von Kroll notes he's gotten a few nice deals on Joma, nothing over $1,000 like this, though. I'm trying to think what my most expensive thing I might have bought. It might have been that Seamaster 300M on Joma. I bought that through Joma. I bought my Tudor 1926 I used to have through Joma. I want to think there was a third. I bought my that red Seiko, the Flower Bay I just reviewed. That I just bought on Joma back in October, but that's under $100. So I let's not get too carried away on that. I bought a watch as a gift for someone on Joma. That was the Tudor, not the Ranger. It's the whatever their Explorer 2 watch is. You know, the GMT with the steel bezel. I'm blanking on the name right now. I bought that, but it wasn't for me. It's a gift for a friend. Can't remember. That might be it. I haven't bought a lot through Joma. I just watch them a lot to see the pricing. Like I've got like 23 watches tracked on Joma, including a bunch of Carl F. Bookerers. I'm just waiting for them to be like 90% off. Will they ever get there? Maybe not. That might be too much of a loss. I'm not sure. Ben's correcting Le Jouperet to say the LGP brand. So the phonetics are appreciated. Rispel Ignorant says, suffering with the flu and still wearing my deep blue precision diver 300M NH36 blue dial Pepsi bezel SKX homage. Okay, well, I think that is just about it. I actually have family in town from Alaska, so I am going to end this so I can go meet up with them. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, everyone, for helping me correct my pronunciations. I do appreciate it. Thank you, though, for also accepting that I'm not an AI robot, so I'm going to say a bunch of stuff wrong. And hopefully you enjoyed these discussions about the new Tudor Ranger and the new 4th generation Omega Planet Ocean. If you're watching the recording, leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'll go back and read those. I often will reply to them as well. It's a small channel. I'm able to keep up pretty well with commentary. So that's it. I will plan to be back next weekend with another live stream. And until then, I'll talk to you all on the next episode. See you later.